Hello, I'm Dr. Jean Hess. I'm the parent of a child with autism. Parent first. Always parent first. But I was also a teacher for 11 years. I've been a parent advocate for 15, and I have a doctorate in special ed. And I want to talk to you today about boundaries. Boundaries feel so important, and our kiddos don't come out with boundaries. So we have to teach them boundaries. And sometimes I've discovered that our own boundaries aren't really great. And so teaching our kids about boundaries is that much more difficult. Have you found that to be true too? So I want to talk to you today about boundaries and why they're super important. If our child doesn't know not to run in a street, then our child will run in the street. And as parents, we know that's a really big no-no. And so we teach them not to run in the street. But do we also teach them when it's okay to come into a conversation, or when it's okay to stay up late, or when it's okay to call somebody a bad name? I mean, there are lots of boundaries that we need to help them understand. And we have to start by having our own boundaries. And so I discovered when my son was younger that one of the boundaries that I really needed to help him with was touching other people. I had really long hair. If you can imagine this, my hair was 18 inches longer than it is right now. And it was always his security object. When he was an infant, he would reach up and he would curl his fingers into my hair. He didn't have a stuffy that he ever really strongly connected with, because when he needed calming, he would come and it was really curly, he would put a ringlet or make a ringlet around his finger. And so he really thought that that meant that he needed to touch everybody's hair. Some of it was he wanted to find out, did it feel like mine? How did it feel different? Oh, and he really likes, he calls this my straight line, the part. Mama, I like that straight line in your hair. And so he still, at 25, occasionally touches other people's hair. And I have tried to help him understand boundaries. Your child may have something else that they struggle with that you need to teach them. And you have to start with your own. And so if you don't have strong boundaries, your child won't either. There are things I just won't talk to him about because, quite frankly, they're not his business. And so, as a teacher and as a parent advocate and as just an observer of life, I see parents all the time who talk to their children about things that they probably might be better off not talking about. So, for example, I have been a single parent for most of Alex's life, and I have never talked to him about the struggle that that has been, the sacrifice that that has taken. I don't do that because I don't want him to feel burdened by being the reason that some of my life has been challenging. And so I just don't. I am more open with him now that he is 25 so that he can have some understanding and make his own decisions about how he wants to spend his time and how he wants to present himself in the world. But there were lots of things that I just knew they're adult things and they shouldn't be shared with children. So I just didn't. You have to make those decisions for yourself. And I understand that. But as a professional and somebody who worked with emotionally disturbed and behaviorally disordered children for a very long time, I can tell you that they would tell me things that really surprised me. And so, boundaries. I just think that they're really good. So, how do you do that? So, I do it in a way that's really gentle. I say, I can't talk to you about that right now. Or that's a grown up thing. I use that one a lot. That's a grown up thing. When you're older, he doesn't like that one. But the grown up thing has worked for a very long time. Or now that he is a grown up, I just say, that's a boundary and I can't talk to you about that. That's difficult for him to understand, but I also have encouraged him to have boundaries. So here's an example. He goes and sees his individual counselor. And he'll come out and I'll say, "Do you want to share any of what you talked about, or is that private?" "That's private, Mama." "Okay, great. I'm really glad to respect that." And I am. And I don't ask it again if he tells me. His room is a boundary. I made that decision a long time ago. And so I don't just walk into his room, I knock on his door. And what has happened is when he feels that he needs to come into one of my spaces and the door is closed, he'll knock because I have modeled for him that a closed door is a boundary. And I don't just go walking in because he's a 25-year-old and there are things I do not want to know about as his mother. So when the door is closed, I do not walk in. But likewise, I don't expect him to walk into my space behind a closed door. So those are two ways that I help him. It's a grown up thing, or is that private? It is private. And they work really well. So why don't you share some of the ways that you help your little ones or big ones understand what boundaries are in the comments? That would be great. We'll have a dialogue about it. And I'll be here soon and we'll do another one. Thanks so much for joining.